This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
So in a video I did, we talked about these quarterbacks positively. We sung the praises of all the quarterbacks that I know a little bit of anything about in this draft class, and we kumbaya'd and we talked about it, and we high-fived each other. Oh, I like that guy too, and we had fun with it. Now it's time to get negative. It's a hater's guide. Yeah, it's time to get negative about the whole quarterback class. I'm going to talk about all of the reasons not to draft the quarterbacks in this class in a similar way that we did earlier, where we talked about the positives and highlighted the positives of these quarterbacks. Now we're going to approach the conversations about these quarterbacks in a negative direction. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's start with Brady Cook. Absolutely way too conservative at the quarterback position for me. Only threw 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, so the interception number is low, but he made Luther Burton's life very difficult at Missouri. Anybody who watched Luther Burton's tape will tell you that man constantly missed Luther Burton. And Luther Burton was the best player on that team, so I don't know really how that happens. I don't really see an NFL future for Brady Cook unless he, becomes a little bit less conservative as a passer. Let's look at number 403, Taylor El-Gma. Now, he had a tough job. This is the dude from Canada who had to come up and last minute fill in at the Senior Bowl. He had a tough job. He had to come in last minute and practice at the Senior Bowl. It's very tough to do. That being said, he was sold to everybody as, hey, man, the physical tools are fantastic with him. Yeah, it just wasn't what was advertised from him. He didn't look like he had outstanding physical tools. Honestly, the tools were average. They weren't bad. They were about average. So I wasn't super excited. I don't think he'll be drafted. Maybe he's a Canadian football player, so maybe he goes to the CFL and has a nice career there. But I don't really see an NFL future for him. Seth Henigan, another guy I don't really see an NFL future for. And the reason I don't think he'll be really a long career in the NFL, maybe he might be a prototypical spring football guy, if we're being honest about it. He has the weakest arm in a draft class that has a lot of weak arms. Like we talked about it, the combine throwing was not good from the quarterback class in general. And that's because this quarterback class is not that good and has a lot of weak arms in it. And Seth Henigan might have the weakest arm of all of them. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Let's move on to Max Brosmer, who we talked about having good physical tools. Well, not good physical tools, but, a nice story coming out the FCS and being able to adjust. I think the ultimate issue with Max is that his physical tools are just lacking a little bit, and he isn't spectacular enough in any area to be above mediocre at a NFL level. So I think he will always be a practice squad or a third quarterback option. Maybe if your team's not doing too hot and they want a cheap backup, maybe he might be able to elevate himself to backup. But I see him living the fringe quarterback life. Now, because he played in a pro-style offense, because he's going to be somebody I think will play and practice really well, I think he'll be sticky on NFL rosters. But I do think that he's going to have a trouble staying on like the active roster. I think he's going to be a practice squad staple pretty much throughout his rookie window here. Tyler Shough. We talked about the good stuff with Tyler Shough, and I think a lot of people have been talking about the good stuff with Tyler Shough. But it's time for us to direct this conversation in a bit more of a negative direction, because some of the stuff I'm hearing about him is just straight up ridiculous. People talking about he's going to be a fringe first-round pick. Some people even suggested second-round pick. And I think it's time for us to get real about what Tyler Shough is. He is a 26-year-old quarterback who has had one full season as a starter in college football. Again, we talked about in the video. My man used to back up Justin Herbert. All-pro Justin Herbert, who has it? Yes, Justin Herbert. And he's played one full season of college football. Some of it is injuries. Some of it is level of play. Another red flag for me with him is I'm always wary of quarterbacks who, once they become significantly older than the average age of the college pool playing, they suddenly have a leap in production. Tyler was 25 playing against 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. He had a significant age advantage, a significant, I wouldn't say experience advantage because he hasn't played a ton of football, but a ton of advantage when it comes to like having time to learn the game, right? Like I was just a smarter person at 26, significantly so, than I was at 20. Like his brain got to be fully developed. A lot of these dudes out here, their brain ain't developed until like 22. So yeah, he played a lot better once he got super old for the college game, which raises a red flag because, yeah, you should be, right? The same thing happened with the dude like Brandon Weeden, Chris Winkie. Like, you can name all these older quarterbacks who came into the league. Maybe is Doug Flutie? Was Doug Flutie old when he came to the league? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I think Doug Flutie's the only one you can kind of say was successful. A lot of these, Chris Winkie was kind of successful too. But a lot of these guys who are older come to the league late and they don't really end up being successful because once they're not playing against 18-year-olds, they're playing against 30-year-olds and other grown-ass men, it becomes apparent that that was a bit more of an advantage. Also, another thing to consider, my man is 26 years old. He's played one full season of college football, like I mentioned earlier. He might be more of a project than people anticipate because he hasn't played that much football. I'm not trying to draft a 26-year-old project. And if you're looking for the Browns to draft a 26-year-old project, that would break every trend that this team has had, every guardrail that this team has had. They usually don't draft older players. Tyler Shough would be one of the oldest players in this draft class that is expected to be drafted. So those are the hater reasons on Tyler Shough. Riley Leonard, 159 here. The passing is just never going to be what you want it to be with him, man. Like, it's just never going to be there. He's just not a consistent passer. His frame, while he is big, is not wide. Like, he's not a big guy. Like, you look at Will Howard. Will Howard's a big guy. Riley Leonard's just tall, right? He's 6'3", he's tall, but he's very slight. So his run style of going up the middle, while it's effective in college football, where he's a bigger guy in college football, his frame's not going to be exceptionally big in the NFL. So he's not going to be that effective of a runner, even doing what he did at Notre Dame. So I don't think his game translates. He's not going to be the passer you want him to be. He's just been an inconsistent guy from the passing position his whole career. And the higher up he played in college football, the more and more his ability or inability as a passer came up as a problem for him. All right, let's talk about Kyle McCord, number 145 here on the board. We talked about the positives with him. Let's talk about the negatives. He left Ohio State and they got better. Like, for all the things that he overcame at Syracuse, and he played well, and you got to give him credit for that. The stance is he left Ohio State. Ohio State went and got Will Howard, and they went way farther with Will Howard than they would have ever went with Kyle McCord. And for all the flack that Will Howard does get, because he played in this offense that has all of these tools at wide receiver, the same exact thing was true for Kyle McCord, and he couldn't make it happen. Matter of fact, he was throwing to his high school best friend, and he couldn't make it happen. That was like the worst part of his game at Ohio State, was him throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr. He went to the ACC, which is a drop down in competition to the Big 12. He played a lot better in the ACC, but it's not the same as having that level of competition that you're going to have in the Big 12. I mean, not the Big 12. I'm tripping there. The Big 10. So that is the big concern with Kyle. Why was Ohio State worse with him at quarterback versus Will? Like, if you're going to tell me that Will Howard is not special or not that good, he's getting overrated because of the playoff run, but you're high on Kyle McCord, you got to explain those two things to me, because Ohio State was significantly better once they replaced Kyle McCord as the quarterback for the team, and that does matter as much as his success at Syracuse matters as well. Dillon Gabriel. It ain't hard to figure out what hater points you could come out with Dillon Gabriel. He's small, he's left-handed, and these throwing drills post the season, like when he's on tape, the arm doesn't look bad. But man, in the Senior Bowl, he had some very scary moments where it looked like his arm is just not going to make it. And in the combine, again, he wasn't consistent with hitting outs. He was like, the whole thing with Dillon Gabriel, right, is he's supposed to sell you this ideal that he could be a game manager. He could be this consistent guy in the NFL. But in the pre-draft process, Dillon Gabriel has demonstrated that he's very inconsistent, at least while doing this pre-draft stuff. Maybe he benefited from a lot of smoke and mirrors throughout his college career. Maybe the increase in size, his speed of the players that he's playing around has a great effect on him. But there's something different about the Dillon Gabriel that you saw on tape at Oregon and at UCF and at Oklahoma, and the Dillon Gabriel you're seeing in the pre-draft process, where he doesn't look accurate, he doesn't look consistent, he's not playing good football. He was somebody you expected to be really good at the Senior Bowl, was not good at the Senior Bowl, got outplayed by Tyler Shough and Seth Henigan, which nobody expected. Same thing comes around with the combine. You expect him to be able to hit some of these throws, show the scouts that he has better arm strength than people give him credit for, because you see it on film, but comes to the combine and it didn't look good for him. So that is a massive concern for Dillon Gabriel. Let's go to Will Howard. Hey, look, I like Will Howard's tape. I talked about it before, but the thing you cannot ignore about Will Howard is that arm, it's concerning. It's not the weakest arm I've ever seen. It's not a dangerously incapable arm, but it is surfing around Case Keenum, right? Like, it's in that Case Keenum range where you're worried, hey, is this a career backup or is this a guy who could potentially start? And in order for him to be a potential starter, he has to do something to adjust for that arm strength, because it seemed like he tried to get more zip on the ball at the combine, and that greatly affected his consistency and his accuracy. So is he somebody who cannot put the ball in a place where it needs to be if he has to throw it with any oomph? Is that something that he can adjust? I don't know. But all of these things from somebody who's 6'5" and 230 pounds, that has to be addressed before you can consider taking Will Howard any higher than maybe mid to late second round, and definitely like third, fourth round. So that's the big concern with Will Howard. The arm strength is a serious concern, right? It's not like Shedeur Sanders where he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but it's not a big deal. No. He has an arm that you need to be worried about, because I don't know if he can play, and use at least 70% of the field with his current display of arm strength. With Quinn Ewers, it's a similar complaint, except for Quinn Ewers is not as decisive as Will Howard. He's not as accurate as Will Howard, and he's a flat-out disaster on deep balls, where Will Howard is not a disaster on deep balls. Not Kyle McCord. Quinn Ewers, flat out, like, every time he throws to the field side, it's a scary movie for the offensive coordinator, because who knows who's going to get to that ball first. And it's more shocking because, like, Quinn Ewers was a 5-star prospect. People thought he had a rocket arm in high school, and then he gets to college and it's like, what happened? Like, was there a shoulder injury at some point in his career? Like, did something go wrong with Quinn Ewers? I don't know. But that arm is just not doing it. There are moments where he makes some nice throws at Texas, but there are a lot of moments where you look at Texas and think to yourself, man, if they could have put Arch Manning in, maybe they could have been a better team. And it's never a good sign for a quarterback that you're thinking about drafting when everybody who watched his team played or rooted for Texas is wondering, man, what could have we have done if we put the backup in? Could we have accomplished more? So you want to draft a guy that people already are dreaming about the backup. I wouldn't want to do that, right? The last guy that was put in that position was Spencer Rattler with Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams ended up being a significantly better prospect than Spencer Rattler. Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning has that same energy behind it. Also, Quinn Ewers be playing scared sometimes, and that's just not something that you want out the quarterback position. All right, let's go to our next guy, Jaylen Milroe. Jaylen Milroe. Look, I like Jaylen Milroe as a person. I think that some of the stuff that he's achieved off the field is really cool, right? Talk about a grad student. Love the way that he talks about his family. Love the way that he talks about success in general, right? You listen to him on the podcast. Jaylen Milroe talks about how it's not just doing it by yourself, it's doing it as a team. And I think that's an important mindset for a quarterback to have. If Jaylen Milroe could hit his layups as a quarterback, I would be all for taking Jaylen Milroe. But him hitting his layups has been such a difficult proposition for him in college football that I cannot sit here and recommend that the Browns take him in the first 2 days of the draft. It would be absurd. And that's the big difference, right? A lot of people compare Jaylen Milroe to Jalen Hurts, and I could see why they would make that transition, right? Jaylen Milroe has a similar build to Jalen Hurts. Both were Alabama quarterbacks for a time, both fantastic runners, not the best throwers of the football, but they're not good throwers in different ways. Jaylen Milroe can make a spectacular throw, but he can't make a consistent throw. Like, he could do an amazing thing 1 time out of 10, but he can't do what you need him to do 7 times out of 10. You feel me? Like, there's going to be a wild level of variancy on these throws. You're going to have some throws you go, damn. And you're going to have some throws where you go, how does that happen, right? Like, for every Auburn throw to Isaiah Bond that you get a throw where, like, Jaylen Milroe just, like, straight up misses an extended handoff to a running back. And you're just sitting there like, how does he miss that? He cannot, for the life of him, consistently hit the layups. He has the exact skill set of the quarterback that will drive you crazy, right? Because he's going to show you these flashes and show you that he could do these things, and then you just ask him to do something simple, like hit mesh on 3rd and short, and he takes a 10-yard sack. The pocket presence for Jaylen Milroe has been a big issue. He takes a lot of hits, and he has small hands, and he takes a lot of hits. Also, he has small hands, and he's going to be running a lot. So you're worried about fumbles becoming a problem in the next level, especially if you're drafting him for a team like Cleveland that's going to be playing in the weather. For as intriguing as Jaylen Milroe is because of his physical attributes and his inability to physically hit a layup as a quarterback are the same exact reason you don't really have much faith in his ability to develop as a guy that's going to be much of a threat at the next level. My comp for him, also, I will hit on this. Sometimes we fall into this crutch about talking about Jaylen Milroe by saying, hey, the ceiling is incredible for him. I'm going to challenge that notion. I don't think that the ceiling for Jaylen Milroe is that incredible because, again, he cannot hit the layups. I think that's always going to be a problem for him. Maybe different degree of an issue, but it's always going to be a problem. Staying ahead of the sticks is going to be a problem for Jaylen Milroe. And as long as that's an issue, his ceiling is not that high. I think he could be Tyrod Taylor. I don't want to be the team that drafts Jaylen Milroe. I want to be the second team that gets him, right? Somebody's going to have to draft him, develop him for 4 years. I want to be the team in 4 years that signs him if you need a quarterback really quick, because I think there might be something there with Jaylen Milroe, because I do love the personality. I think he is really smart. I think he is really hard working, so he might put the work in to fix some of this stuff, hit a higher percentage of layups, and he might have a Tyrod Taylor-like second leg to his career. But I ain't trying to draft that. in no third round. Like, I don't think any team that drafts him going to get any use out of him. Jackson Dart, I'm not a big fan of Jackson Dart. I feel like he fits the mold of the overhyped Ole Miss quarterback that eventually ends up playing in the UFL that we've seen with Chad Kelly and Matt Corral, I think, was the last guy that we did this with. Some people even did it with the guy, Tiamu, right, out of DC, right? There's always like an Ole Miss Lane Kiffin guy that people fall in love with. But there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in that Ole Miss offense. And even with those smoke and mirrors, I think he was a late processor in that offense. And he wasn't necessarily the most consistently accurate guy there. There is some stuff to like. Again, we talked about that in the video prior with Jackson Dart, but I just don't think the hype and the noise for Jackson Dart this process matches the prospect. And I think if you draft him in the third round, there's a high chance that this ends up being a Matt Corral or a another situation where you take a guy earlier, like a Kyle Trask ended up being this too, where you take a guy earlier and you never really get anything out of him, because I just think right now he's a bit overhyped. People talk about him sliding into the first round. I just don't see that for him. All right, let's talk about Shedeur. What do we not like about Shedeur Sanders? I've talked about this a ton, so I'll be brief here. Shedeur has bad habits, and he's not athletic enough to get away with those bad habits at the next level. He's a drifter in the pocket. He's very flighty in the pocket sometimes. Sometimes he stands in there, takes a hit. Sometimes he's out early. He relies on athleticism when he's not that athletic. I do worry about level of competition being a significant factor for him, because he's going to have to speed his mechanics up, and I don't think he's going to bode well if he has to speed his mechanics up. You watched him play against a team like Nebraska, right? They have an athletic defensive tackle in Ty Robinson, and that gave Shedeur Sanders hell. Literally, if do this with me, literally in chat, do this with me. If you go and look for athletic edges, pro level edges in the games they had against Shedeur Sanders, and you look at what Shedeur Sanders has done against those guys, it's been bad news all the time. Oregon, the year prior, and I believe against Leatu Latu, against UCLA, 2 horrible games for Shedeur Sanders. This year, plays Tyler Batty, looks terrible, plays Nebraska, looks terrible. When those defensive lines get faster, he does not look very good. That is a big concern with Shedeur Sanders, especially in the NFL, especially you're thinking about drafting him to the AFC North. So as pretty as his ball is, and he can throw as accurate as anybody in this draft class, the size, he's not a big guy. He's kind of undersized at the position a little bit. Not super undersized to the point to where you're overly concerned about it, but still a bit undersized. You would like him to have more on his frame than he does. You have the whole Sanders family apparatus thing surrounding him as well. Just a lot of questions about Shedeur's translation to the pros. Let's talk about Cam Ward here. What are the negatives about Cam? Look, Cam can sling it. Cam has that arm talent that you want out of a quarterback that's going to go this early. What Cam does not have is the poise and mental control of a quarterback that you want to take this early. Cam often makes questionable decisions at the quarterback position. That is a concern for me for a quarterback that you want to play in the NFL. We've seen that be a concern, right? There's a lot of similarities between him and Zach Wilson. Some of the wild stuff that you like to do. It doesn't seem like he likes to be in structure. Doesn't seem like he has any interest in being in structure, right? When you ask Cam Ward about it, he's like, hey, I take up time in the pocket. I think that's a good thing. He doesn't understand why he needs to be in more of a sense of urgency. For as talented as he is, I think he throws up a lot of the red flags that concern me about a quarterback prospect going this early in a much different way than what happens with a lot of quarterback prospects, right? Like some guys like Bo Nix, you're wondering, is that going to translate to the NFL, that physical skill set? Same thing with like a guy like Will Howard, right? Is that going to translate to the NFL? To a lesser extent, Michael Penix. Then there are guys who you worry about if their play style can translate to the NFL. He's played 5 years as a starter. He's not changed a single thing about how he likes to play. He does not like to play in structure. He is constantly late in structure in times where it is absolutely imperative for him to just take what's in front of him. He still doesn't do it. 3rd and short situations, he will still hold the football for a ridiculously long amount of time, even though people are open underneath. These are things that at Miami are going to be okay because Cam Ward is supremely talented and more talented than most of the players he would play against. So he could get away with it at Miami, and it's going to look fine at Miami. But even at Miami, it showed its cracks. I mean, this is a team that should have been in the playoff, ended up playing in the Duke Mayo Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl, wherever it is that they had to play it. But in Cam Ward's level of play had something to do with that. So yeah, just in the NFL, him holding the ball, that's going to matter, right? Him not being very decisive, that's going to matter. Him not making sound football decisions on a regular basis when he drops back, that's going to matter, right? All that stuff turns into interceptions, and then it makes you not care about the fact that he could throw the football super far and super long. A lot of people want to see Patrick Mahomes with him, but oftentimes when you want to see Patrick Mahomes with the prospect, you end up finding out it's Jameis Winston, right? You end up finding out that it's just an interception machine. That's my big concern with Cam Ward, is that he's not going to be somebody who can consistently keep the ball on the side of the field that it's supposed to stay at. Maybe he can get some chunk plays. Maybe he can get some net yards, but he might end up being an interception machine or a turnover machine because he has these habits that I don't think he has any interest of growing out of. Maybe the NFL, he learns the hard way and he gets out of here. But 5 years as a starter in college football, no interest in changing it. I don't see why I would be convinced that it would change later. You see what I mean? But that's the hater's guide to the 2025 quarterbacks class. All right, so we done hating on the quarterbacks. I want to make sure y'all understand the concept of this video is to be a hater. So don't take it too personally. If I said something about a player that you did not like, or if I have a disagreement here, this is a hater's guide. Please try not to take it too deathly serious. I think sometimes we tend to take arguments about the draft a bit too serious and go a little bit too far. So again, just a hater's guide. We having fun with it. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. Have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.